here are some of the things to keep in mind. First of all, the book of Job is only found in the Hebrew language in ancient form. It is not found paralleled in any other culture. It is a strictly Hebrew thing. The dating of Job himself, whether he existed or is a fictitious character, is around the time of Abram. So that's the culture and the setting in which Job exists. Exactly who wrote this, we have no idea. There are various studies that try to look at the use of words, and they place it all over the map, but some of that could have been updated over time, so we really don't have a strong handle on when the thing was written. What is true about the book of Job is that it assumes the moral matrix and the landscape of ancient Israel. It assumes there is a God who is in charge of everything. It assumes that God is the creator. It assumes that evil is an intrusion into an otherwise good world. It assumes that people have responsibility. It assumes that there is a moral right and a moral wrong. It assumes punishment and reward. It assumes all of those things. What it does, however, is it probes the complexity of living in a compromised universe. Hasatan comes in there. The Satan comes in early. Where did he come from? We don't know. Does it tell us? It doesn't tell us. We don't know. And I give you some things in covenant documents that show that whole development, which is fascinating in and of itself. But the term means the accuser, and that term will come back in the New Testament, especially in Revelation chapter 12, where the accuser of our brethren is thrown down, and that's the dragon that's in Revelation 12. Whatever it is, the opening setting seems to show God having lieutenants that are supervising the creation. We hear hints of that in Daniel, where in Daniel chapter 12, Daniel is talking with this messenger. This messenger is giving him guided tours, and the messenger says, I tried to come earlier, but I was prevented. And there seems to be something of the same there, that what we cannot see is that God, in the management of creation, has angelic creatures that support or participate in the management of the world. And here's where it seems, and again, there's no confirmation of this, but it seems as if Hasatan, the Satan, may be one of those intentionally good angels that just became too big for his britches, decided that he needed more authority or needed preeminence or prominence in everything, and became increasingly tilted away from God and became the devil, the one who nags, the one who twists, the one who perverts. And that becomes important for the story. But notice that once we get past that opening setting, the rest of the story never takes the devil into account again. Never does Satan show up again after the first 2 chapters. It's really funny because that's exactly how the whole thing is set up. And then Satan disappears. And the rest of it happens in our arena, in our world. But it starts with this wager. It starts with the wager of God thinking pretty highly of Job. Look at my guy Job. And Satan says, yeah, sure. You know why he's your guy. It's because you give him all the toys. If you weren't playing Santa Claus to him, this is all anachronistic now, if you weren't playing Santa Claus to him, he wouldn't stick with you. And that's where God says, you think so? Yeah, I'm sure of it. And then God says, well, I'll give you a little leeway here and take the toys away. See what happens. The toys are taken away, and Job, this is kind of facetious because some of the toys are children themselves, so I'm just playing the game here. But the toys are taken away, and still Job will not curse God. And so they have a second round of this, and the debate continues. Yeah, see, he's a good man. Yeah, but, you touch a man's life. You kept me from touching him, but if you give him some pain, you just see how long this lasts. And so he's given the ability to touch Job's personal life, and he's in terrible pain. Some of us have experienced terrible pain, and we know how debilitating that is, not just to our bodies, but to our minds, to our thinking, to our understanding of reality, even our spirituality, and where is God when it hurts. Well, that plays into the rest of the story. And then we have the rounds of dialogue. And there are 3 rounds of dialogue. The first one is where each of Job's friends gets a shot at him. They're really good friends for 7 days when they sit around and commiserate with him and don't say a word, but then they start talking. And the whole point of their talking is that obviously Job has done something wrong. Religion, God, this world, morality is a cause and effect show. You do right, you get blessed. You do wrong, you get cursed. That's the thing. And that is tedious and horrible, but it plays itself out. And it plays itself out in such a way that in the 3rd time around that they do this, Bildad and Zophar, Eliphaz and Bildad get to speak again, but Zophar is nowhere found in that last one. Then suddenly out of nowhere, chapter 33 or chapter 32, another guy pops in. Some have said, well, the book was unfinished and somebody else added this. We don't know. What we've got is what we've got, and all the manuscripts go back and they have this. He pops in and he says, yeah, I've been waiting here in the wings. I'm younger than you, so I waited for you old guys to talk for a while, and you haven't answered, Job. Eliphaz says, or Elihu says a lot of the same things that the friends do, except for one important distinction he makes. Sometimes he says we are receiving pain and suffering not because of specific things we have done, but because we live in a compromised universe. Paul Brand was a doctor among lepers in India and then the southern U.S., and his friend Philip Yancey came and wrote articles about him, and they collaborated on those books, Fearfully and Wonderfully Made and things like that. But Philip Yancey remembers a time when he was interviewing Dr. Paul Brand. Dr. Brand had to go to a storage shed behind the medical facility in order to get something, and he went to that shed. When he got there, there was a key in the lock, but the key had been rusted, frozen. And so Dr. Brand tried to turn the key. It was just sitting there, and he couldn't. He was quite an old man even at the time, so Philip Yancey said, let me give it a try. And so he tried to turn the key, and he couldn't do that. But they had a young boy, 7 years old, with them who was just kind of looking on and things, and he was just part of that whole scene. And he said, let me give it a try. And of course, the older men said, sure, you try it. So the little boy, they knew he couldn't do it. He got his fingers on the key, and he started turning, and he turned the key and opened the door. And they were astounded until they looked at his hand. He had actually ripped all of the skin and the muscle off his fingers right down to the bone. He had leprosy. And what leprosy had done is it had severed the link between his brain and his nervous system, so that while the turning of the key produced a great amount of pain for Dr. Brand and for Philip Yancey that says, stop, you're hurting me. The boy didn't have that, and because he didn't have that, he turned the key to his own hurt. And Philip Yancey uses that as kind of this thing that Elihu is saying in his part of the dialogue, that sometimes there is pain and suffering in our world, and it's a way to hear once again the voice of God, not because we have done something wrong, but the way that Jesus himself would use it in the New Testament. Have you heard about the tower that fell on those people? Were they more sinful than anybody else? Are you understanding what's going on? And so the signs of the times and all of that. Then comes God, and God certainly doesn't, play games. He just gives 20 children's sermons, 10 about the animal world, 10 about the non-animal world of nature. And each time, basically, God asks a question. You know why snow comes? You know where the wind starts? You know how the animals can live in the holes on the rock wall? And basically 20 times over, God simply asks a question that, at least in their circumstances, cannot be answered. Nobody knows. And then God says, well, that's the point, isn't it? You don't know everything. And Job says, I'm sorry. And God says, you want to take my place? And Job says, no, I don't. And then we get right to the end, and Job is blessed and his life is restored. But the whole of the book doesn't give any resolution to anything. It doesn't confirm anything. It does, however, challenge our perceptions, particularly that biggest assumption we make, that doing good demands reward, doing bad means we're going to get punished. And notice in the end that God wants to punish Job's friends, which is really quite something, because they said Job was being punished because he did something wrong. So if they want to live in their world, then they, having spoken wrongly, deserve to be punished. And what happens? Job stands in and intercedes for them so that they do not get what they deserve. There are no good answers to the problem of suffering. As a pastor, I've known this, and I've sat in places and I've experienced myself suffering that makes absolutely no sense and is totally disconnected from people's experiences or their morality. True, sometimes things go bad because people do dumb things and terrible things and all that, but there's a lot of stuff that just happens, and the book of Job is one of those immensely important books that is completely in tune with the whole of the Bible, including Jesus' teachings, that ours is not a religion of cause and effect. There are associations between living properly and being blessed, but there's no such thing as a health and wealth gospel in the Bible. That is something that happens, and you can be thankful for it, but it is not. God says if you tithe, you're going to get 100-fold back. If you obey, you're going to be blessed. You want $1 million, you just do these 17 things and you'll get that. The book of Job tears that apart in spades. It sustains the omnipotence of God. It sustains the care God has for people, but it refuses to make a direct connection between actions and outcomes. And that's a very important thing. That book itself, every time I talk about it in my classes, people are just stunned in silence, thinking about not about what I've said, but about this thing as it happens in their lives. There's a lot more we could say about that, but that's really the thing of the book of Job.